For 6,000 years, this grass-fed civilizations in ancient Sudan, Neolithic farmers domesticated it before the pyramids were built. They watched it survive when the Nile failed. They watched it bend in dust storms that flattened the wheat. They called it the grain that does not die. Egyptian priests boiled its juice into a black mineral syrup and rationed it during the famine years. Tomb paintings from the 5th dynasty show its sheaves stacked beside emmer and barley in the granaries of Karnak. By 1500 BC, the grain has crossed the Sahara. By 1000 BC, it feeds the empires of the Sahel. By 1300 AD, the kings of Mali drink its fermented beer in golden cups, while Arab traders write of West. African villagers pressing its cane into a thick, dark molasses they use as both food and medicine. The Arab geographer al-Bekri describes it in 1067. The Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta describes it in 1352. For 7 centuries, this grass is the sweetener of half a continent. Then come the slave ships. For 200 years, enslaved African farmers carried the seeds in their hair across the Middle Passage. They cannot bring tools, they cannot bring weapons, they cannot bring the names of their gods. But they can hide a single seed in a single braid, and they do. The seeds reach South Carolina in the 1700s. They reach Tennessee by 1800. They reach Pennsylvania by 1850. By 1860, they have crossed every river east of the Mississippi. A grass that crossed an ocean in a child's hair becomes the sweetener of the American Republic. Then the Sugar Trust came. In 1887, 8 refineries merged into a single corporation in a meeting room on Wall Street. They called themselves the Sugar Refineries Company. The newspapers called them the Sugar Trust. Within 90 days, they controlled 98% of all sugar refining in the United States. They owned the docks at Brooklyn. They owned the ships at the Caribbean. They owned the warehouses on Front Street. They owned the railroads that carried the sugar inland. They owned everything. Everything except one thing. As long as American farmers could grow their own sweetener for free, the trust could not raise prices. Sorghum stood between them and a billion-dollar monopoly. Sorghum had to die. So they did what monopolies always do. They went to Washington. In 1890, Congress passed the McKinley Tariff Act. It imposed duties on imported raw sugar. It handed every domestic cane sugar refiner a federal bounty of 2 cents per pound. It was the first sugar subsidy in American history. It was paid for by the American taxpayer, and it was a death warrant for sweet sorghum. Within 20 years, sorghum syrup production collapsed by 90%. Not because it failed, because Congress was bought. This is the story of sweet sorghum, the $0 syrup that fed half a continent before. Big Sugar bought America's lawmakers. Welcome to Nature Lost Vault. Before we open this vault, if these stories matter to you, the best way to preserve this wisdom is simple. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share these vaults with those who need to remember what we forgot. The archive opens in northeastern Africa, more than 6,000 years ago. A Neolithic farmer kneels at the edge of the Nile. The river has not flooded this year. The barley is dead. The wheat is dust. But one tall grass stands untouched in the dry wind. It bends, it does not break. The farmer cuts a stalk and bites into it. Sweet juice runs down his hand and onto the cracked earth. He calls it the grain that does not die. For the next 4,000 years, his descendants carry the seed south. They carry it across the Nubian deserts. They carry it across the savannas of the Sahel. They plant it in the dry red soil of Mali, where nothing else will grow. By 1000 BC, the grass feeds entire kingdoms. By 1100 AD, the Empire of Ghana taxes its harvest. By 1300 AD, the Empire of Mali grows so wealthy from its trade that the king Mansa Musa walks to Mecca with 60,000 servants and gives away so much gold the price collapses across Egypt for a decade. The same grass that fed the slaves of the pyramids now feeds the wealthiest king in the world. Then the Portuguese arrive. In 1444, Portuguese ships land on the coast of Senegal. They take captives, they take crops. They do not understand the grass. They think it is wild barley. They leave it behind. But the captives they take with them across the Atlantic do not forget. They braid the seeds into the hair of their daughters. They whisper the planting calendar into the ears of their sons. They carry an entire civilization in a fist of grain hidden against the scalp of a child. For 200 years, the seeds cross the ocean again and again. The seeds reach South Carolina in 1750. They reach Virginia in 1760. They reach Kentucky in 1790. By 1800, they have crossed the Appalachians. By 1820, they are in the Ohio River Valley. In 1853, a French chemist named Leonard Ray brings an improved variety from Natal called Chinese sugarcane. He brings it to Liberia. He brings it to England. He brings it to the United States. The U.S. Patent Office hands him a citation. The Department of Agriculture funds field trials in Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, and Tennessee. The trials are a sensation. The new variety yields more juice per acre than any other crop in North America. It survives frost that kills cotton. It survives drought that kills corn. It needs no fertilizer, no irrigation, no specialized labor. A single acre produces 200 gallons of syrup. A child can press the cane with a wooden roller. A wood fire can boil the juice. A glass jar can store the syrup for 2 years without spoiling. By 1860, the U.S. Patent Office has issued 87 separate patents for sorghum cane mills. Then the Civil War comes. The Union blockade cuts the South off from Caribbean cane sugar. Within 18 months, sorghum syrup is the only sweetener left between Pennsylvania and Texas. Confederate soldiers carry it in their rations. Union prisoners survive on it. Lincoln's army marches on it. A wounded sergeant from the Iron Brigade writes home in 1863 from a field hospital in Tennessee. The doctor gave me a spoonful of sorghum, and I felt the strength return. There is nothing in the city of Boston as sweet as this dark molasses from a Tennessee farm. By 1865, sorghum is the sweetener of the American Republic. Every farmhouse keeps a barrel. Every general store sells it by the gallon. Every traveling preacher takes a jar in his saddlebag. The peak comes in 1879. That year, American farmers produced 28 million gallons of sorghum syrup, enough to put a jar in every kitchen in the nation. The U.S. Department of Agriculture funds sorghum research stations in Kansas, Missouri, and Tennessee. Federal extension agents teach farmers how to plant it, press it, and boil it down. The USDA prints free pamphlets in 3 languages. Cookbooks devote entire chapters to it. Children sing songs about it in country schools. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, an Amish farmer named Jacob Hosteteller builds a horse-powered cane mill from oak and iron. It costs him $50 in materials. It will outlast his grandchildren. The neighbors come at harvest time with wagons of cane. Each family takes home 20 gallons of dark golden syrup. Nobody pays a cent. The whole valley smells of boiling sugar for 3 weeks straight. The children sleep with stained fingers. The horses go home heavy with In Holmes County, Ohio, an entire Amish district synchronizes its harvest. 40 families, 4 mills. 1,000 gallons of syrup pressed in 11 days. None of it sold to outsiders. None of it taxed. None of it tracked. In the Tennessee mountains. A Cherokee farmer named John Ross plants sorghum on a 1/4 acre of poor soil and feeds his family of 7 for an entire winter on the syrup he presses with a hand mill his father built before removal. In Kansas, a homesteader writes in her diary in 1881, "This year, we planted no white sugar. The cane has given us all we need, and the children prefer it. I do not believe we shall ever buy from the grocer again. This is what the Sugar Trust cannot allow." In 1887, Henry Havemeyer walks into a meeting room on Wall Street. Havemeyer is 40 years old. He owns the largest sugar refinery in North America. He controls the Brooklyn docks. He has spent 10 years buying his competitors one by one. By the end of that meeting, 8 refineries become one corporation. Havemeyer becomes the most powerful sugarman in the Western Hemisphere. But he cannot raise prices, not while American farmers are pressing their own syrup for free. So he buys senators. In 1890, Senator William McKinley of Ohio introduces a tariff bill written by men with offices 3 blocks from Havemeyer's refinery. The bill imposes duties on imported raw sugar. It hands every domestic cane sugar refiner a federal bounty of 2 cents a pound. The bill passes the House on May 21st. It passes the Senate on September 10th. President Benjamin Harrison signs it on October 1st. The bounty becomes law. Within 5 years, refined cane sugar drops to 4 cents a pound. Sorghum syrup, which requires hand labor and home pressing, cannot compete on price. The grocers stop carrying it. The pamphlets stop printing. The extension agents disappear from the county fairs. The USDA quietly shuts down its sorghum research stations between 1893 and 1906. Internal department memos call the closers. Rationalization. Internal department memos do not mention the Sugar Trust by name. Internal department memos do not have to. By 1920, sorghum production has fallen from 28 million gallons to under 4 million. Then high-fructose corn syrup arrives in 1957. A Japanese chemist named Yoshiyuki Takasaki develops the enzyme process that turns cheap subsidized corn into a sweetener cheaper than cane sugar itself. By 1980, every soda in America runs on it. By 1990, every cookie. By 2000, every loaf of bread. The Sugar Trust has long since dissolved, but the empire it built never falls. It only changes its name. By 1970, sorghum syrup production is under 1 million gallons. By 2000, fewer than 200 commercial producers remain in the entire United States. Most of them are Amish. In 2014, food chemists at the University of Tennessee analyzed traditional Amish sorghum syrup against modern refined sugar. What they find is a biological contradiction. A single tablespoon of sorghum syrup contains more potassium than a banana, more iron than a serving of spinach, more calcium than a glass of milk, magnesium, phosphorus, manganese, B-complex vitamins. 12 unique polyphenol compounds linked to reduced inflammation, improved insulin response, and lower cardiovascular risk. Refined white sugar contains exactly none of these. Zero. The refining process strips them out and sells them. Separately, as molasses byproduct, study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry finds that sorghum syrup spikes blood sugar 30% less than cane sugar. A 2021 study at Purdue University finds that sorghum's polyphenols remain stable through traditional open kettle boiling. A 2023 review in Food's Journal lists sweet sorghum as one of the top 5 most nutrient-dense traditional sweeteners on Earth. The Tennessee researchers compare a single jar of Amish sorghum syrup to a multivitamin pill. The mineral content is comparable. The bioavailability is higher. In other words, the syrup the Amish never stopped making is not just a sweetener. It is a multivitamin the Sugar Trust convinced America to throw away. It still grows. That is the part the Trust could never erase. Sweet sorghum still grows in every state from Pennsylvania to Texas. The seed is legal. The plant is legal. The mills are still being built by hand in Amish workshops in Lancaster County and Holmes County, the same way they were built in 1860. A 100-foot row produces enough syrup to sweeten a household for a year. A backyard plot the size of a parking space yields 5 gallons. The cane press costs less than a microwave. The boiling pot is the same one your great-grandmother used. The recipe has not changed in 4,000 years. Cut the cane at the first hard frost, strip the leaves, crush the stalks. Boil the juice slowly over a wood fire until it darkens to the color of coffee. Skim the foam, pour into glass jars, seal. Wait 1 week for the flavor to deepen. That is the entire recipe. That is what the Sugar Trust spent 30 years and 3 federal subsidies trying to make you forget. In 2023, demand for traditional sorghum syrup tripled. Small farms in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio reported sold-out harvests by October. The Amish never advertised. They never had to. The people who remembered came to find them. In Lancaster County, a young woman named Sarah Stoltzfus inherits her grandfather's cane mill. She is 26 years old. She has never bought a bottle of corn syrup in her life. She presses cane every September with her brothers and her cousins. She fills 400 jars. She sells 380 of them at the roadside stand. By the second weekend of October, the other 20 go to her own pantry, where they will sweeten the bread and the pies and the children's tea for the next 12 months. She has never heard of Henry Havemeyer. She does not need to, because the truth is this: every kitchen in America once had a jar of dark mineral-rich sweetener that cost nothing and lasted forever. Every farm could make its own. Every family knew the recipe. The Sugar Trust did not take that away from your grandmother. They took it away from her grandmother. And in 3 generations, an entire nation forgot a plant it had been growing for 150 years. 3 generations is all it takes. 3 generations to erase 6,000 years of human knowledge. 3 generations to convince a continent that the sweetener it grew with its own hands was somehow inferior to the one shipped in chains from a Caribbean refinery. The Sugar Trust is gone. The McKinley Tariff was repealed in 1894. The Sugar Refineries Company was broken up by the Supreme Court in 1911. The high-fructose corn syrup industry that replaced it is itself now in retreat, but the forgetting stayed. Sweet sorghum is still here, still growing, still pressing, still waiting in the fields of Pennsylvania and Tennessee and Kentucky and Ohio for anyone willing to remember what we used to know. The seeds are sold by mail order for less than the cost of a candy bar. The instructions are printed in a 1922 USDA pamphlet anyone can download for free in 90 seconds. The mills are still being built by Amish carpenters whose great-grandfathers built the originals. 8 men in New York City convinced a country to forget the grass it grew in its own backyard. The Amish never listened. The Cherokee never listened. The Pennsylvania Dutch never listened. And neither did the soil. If this vault opens something for you, please subscribe to Nature Lost Vault and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve this wisdom. The next vault opens soon.